See you later, Brewski 420.
When your
Like the
PSN
PSN
ID
ID.
is Brewski 420, you know it's not going to be much of a fight.
I think I really stopped, because I remember I used to be a huge Mortal Kombat fan when I was a kid, but I think that when I stopped liking it was right around the era of like Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 and those games, and like the PlayStation and N64 games. I guess that was Mortal Kombat 4. Just something about it started just making me ill, and I just stopped playing the games around then.
I have to admit, I never really liked Mortal Kombat ever because it
Yeah, well, they
always
never
seemed
really
so
evolved very much.
choppy. I'm not a fighting game person, so that could probably also contribute. But like, it always just seemed so difficult to play. Like, it wasn't smooth at all, owing to the way that they made the graphics. I don't know if that makes any sense, but.
Oh yeah, like around the same time you had games like Street Fighter. Like around the same time as Mortal Kombat 3 was in arcade, you also had games like the Street Fighter Alpha series was big then. And just like the way the game played, like the way combos were handled and stuff like that, just seemed, it was so stiff and irritating that I would just rather play a game like Street Fighter Alpha where, you know, it at least made more sense as far as, you know, combos and chaining goes.
Where am I?
Yeah, I'm pretty much extremely embarrassed to even admit that I thought like the early Mortal Kombat games were like genuinely good, because clearly they're not. I mean, it's pretty obvious that the team that made those games and make, you know, they still make them. They absolutely have no idea like how you actually make a fighting game. Like they simply do not understand the fundamentals of like the fighting game genre.
Jab, 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 jab. Jab, 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 jab,
This
jab.
is awesome. Blooded shit.
Now I'm back.
Oh, what's up, R1?
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
the
well,
Mortal
I guess
Kombat's interesting
you
just
gotta
for
give
the
them credit
aesthetic.
for knowing their audience.
Well, I mean, they are their own audience. I guess if by knowing their audience, you mean they just made a game that they would want to play, and then other people wanted to play it too. Which is not a bad thing. It's just...
It's just a bad game.
I mean, usually it is a good thing, actually, but in this
Yeah.
case...
Still, it's pretty depressing that like Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance, I think, sold more than like Tekken 4, Soul Calibur 2, and something else combined.
Holy shit, really? It sells that much? I always thought Mortal Kombat was like barely made any money. But they somehow kept making them anyway. I couldn't imagine that anyone would actually pay a bunch of money to play it. But I guess I'm wrong.
Mortal Kombat haters in this podcast.
I mean, I guess you got to
There's no
remember
shame
at
in
some point, like in the past, Mortal Kombat was a really huge series, and people still remember the name. And so, you know, people will still buy the game when it comes out, even if they don't know anything about fighting games or not necessarily fighting game players.
Yeah, in the US at least. Actually, like, I don't really have a very good idea of how popular Mortal Kombat is or ever was in Europe. I mean, like, I loved it, and I had a lot of friends who liked it, like when the first one came out, and like the second one. But I mean, as far as like the PS2 ones go, I don't think they were very popular here, and I don't think like sort of gaming media here or whatever are that excited about the new one. If you compare it to like I don't know, most people in the US or whatever. And needless to say, Mortal Kombat has like no presence whatsoever in Asia.
Ooh.
They targeted the frickin' Stingray thing.
Yeah. And you'll see in the video that it did that to me when we were your level.
The worst.
Was it even released in like arcades in like Japan and stuff? I'm just curious if it had any like release in Asia at all.
I strongly doubt that the arcade versions of of like any Midway games that ever came out in Japan, because just looking at like MAME archive stuff, whatever, I don't think there were any like Japanese versions. Maybe there was some like crazy arcade operator who would import them, but I don't think they ever had any like real arcade distribution or anything like that set up. But Acclaim Japan.
I'm sorry.
Acclaim Japan did publish console versions of quite a few of the earlier games, and I think like Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 on like the PlayStation was one of the last ones to ever come out over there.
Ready to grab your sign, Cuba. Was there a sort of console per console sort of stigma to Mortal Kombat versus Street Fighter 2? I remember my old school back in the day. It seemed like the Super Nintendo kids were more inclined for Street Fighter 2, and the kids that got the Genesis got Mortal. I don't know on a per console basis. I know you could get Mortal Kombat on Super Nintendo, but it didn't seem to happen.
Well,
you know, Genesis do what Nintendo don't, and in this case, that's like rip spines out of people's backs and things.
Pretty much. Yeah, the Super Nintendo version of the first Mortal Kombat was censored. It didn't have any blood, and it changed a lot of the like fatalities and stuff, or finishing moves or whatever they call them in the Super Nintendo version. But of course, like the Super Nintendo had the first version of Street Fighter 2, so I mean obviously there would be sort of a connection between the Super Nintendo and Street Fighter 2, even before Mortal Kombat had come out. And then once Mortal Kombat did come out, the Mega Drive version or Genesis version had blood and fatalities and stuff. You had to use a code to unlock it, but it was all in there. And there were more differences than that between the two versions, though. Like the Super Nintendo version is really kind of slow and buggy and kind of weird. Granted, the MD version isn't perfect, but I think personally it plays a little bit better. And of course, yeah, it has blood and everything like that. But yeah, I guess Nintendo that was kind of a wake-up call for Nintendo, I guess, because the second one was completely uncensored on the Super Nintendo, and pretty much from around that time, like the Nintendo started being a lot more lax about what kind of stuff they would allow on their consoles.
Yeah, I mean, at my school at least, or when I was a kid, really was no like Street Fighter crowd. Like nobody played Street Fighter. Everybody played Mortal Kombat. That was like the only fighting game, at least to most of the kids. I played a little bit of Street Fighter 2. I had a friend who had it on the Super NES, and we would play it some. But really, I mean, like nobody paid any attention to the Street Fighter series at all.
I think here was kind of flavor of the month type thing. Like me and my friends and everyone I knew would be at some point really, really into Street Fighter, and at some point really, really into Mortal Kombat, and then like at some point really, really into like Eternal Champions or Fatal Fury or whatever. And Killer Instinct.
Yeah,
at least.
And all my friends were Super Nintendo people, and no one I knew played Mortal Kombat. Everyone played Street Fighter.
Maybe it's a per region thing. Could be.
Yeah, maybe it's a north-south thing. It's definitely possible.
Could be.
There are weirder.
Yeah, I mean it's totally possible. I mean, like I said, nobody here really played Street Fighter 2. Even the arcades would rarely even have a Street Fighter 2 machine. Usually the only Street Fighter 2 machine you could find was like in the grocery store or something, like, you know, next to the butcher's like area, and just everything just smelled like meat while you're trying to play. It's awful.
Well, hey,
dude, who could hate that? To me, that's a bonus, man. I would love to play
seriously.
Demon's Souls while smelling steak. Are you kidding? I should just set the PlayStation up near the grill.
You know, you should just have it like in a butcher's. That sure would get you in the mood for some, you know, Mortal Kombat. You know, you got the blood and guts, and you can just smell it.
It's so weird too. Like so many like grocery stores as a kid like would have like the best arcade games. At least to me, like a grocery store near my house had like Golden Axe, and I know there's a lot of Golden Axe haters, but I still love the first Golden Axe game dearly. And like, you know, they'd have like Street Fighter 2, and it's like all these games would like the arcade would just have racing games and then Mortal Kombat, and that would be it. But it always seemed like the grocery stores had better taste, and you know, but the only problem is that the games would only be there maybe a